The photo album wasn't supposed to be heavy. It was leather-bound, emerald green, the kind you buy when you still believe memories can be arranged neatly, when you think love can be preserved if you caption it carefully enough. But as I held it in my lap, my hands ached, not from its weight, but from what I had hidden inside. "Stop being so dramatic, Kathleen," Tom said. His voice sliced through the living room like a blade drawn slowly, deliberately. Calm, confident, cruel. Palm Springs sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the marble floors into mirrors. Outside, the palms swayed lazily, unaware that a 25-year marriage was ending in our living room with the casual cruelty of a man checking his watch. Tom stood across from me, jacket already on, suitcase by the door. He didn't look nervous. He looked entertained. "You knew this was coming," he continued, gesturing at the album like it offended him. "I mean, look at this. 25 years condensed into a pathetic little book." He took it from my hands without asking. I watched in silence as he flipped through the pages, bending corners I'd smoothed for weeks, his thumbs smearing fingerprints across wedding photos, holidays, birthdays. Each image was a milestone. Each one a lie I hadn't known was a lie when it was taken. Our wedding day. The first house. Christmas mornings. Anniversary dinners. He didn't know what else was tucked between those pages. Not yet. "Well," he said, snapping the album shut, "since we're being honest." There it was, the pause, the inhale before the execution. "I've been seeing Jessica from the office for 8 months. The words landed softly, like they were meant to bruise slowly. "She's young," he added, smiling. "Ambitious, everything you used to be." Jessica, 28, intern, bright smile, always laughed too hard at his jokes during office dinners. I'd smelled her perfume on his shirts months ago, something floral and reckless, but I'd said nothing. I had been waiting. He nodded toward the suitcase. "I'm leaving tonight. We'll be staying at the Grand Vista until we find our place." "Wait." I folded my hands over the album, now resting on the coffee table. "That's quite the announcement," I said calmly, "and on our anniversary no less." "Oh, come on," he laughed. "Don't tell me you expected me to celebrate. The album, the dinner reservation at Lorenzo's, it's desperate, Kathleen. You're desperate." Something inside me clicked. Not snapped. Clicked. I stood, smoothing my dress, the emerald green one he'd always said made me look old. Funny how power changes perspective. "You're right," I said, walking toward him. "This evening isn't going as planned." His eyebrows lifted. I picked up the album and opened it slowly. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Taking back what's mine." I slid it from his grasp, my fingers steady now. "You won't be needing these memories anymore." His smile faltered, just slightly. What Tom didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that between those carefully curated photos sat the key to his undoing. And my freedom. He glanced at his phone, a smirk returned. "Jessica's waiting downstairs." Of course she was. "I'll have my lawyer contact you," he said, adjusting his tie. "Let's keep this civil, it's better for everyone." I nodded. 3 minutes, I thought. That's all it would take. As he reached for the door, I said softly, "Before you go, there's something you should see." He turned. Reluctant, curious. I slid my fingers between the pages of our Hawaiian vacation, the trip where he'd spent more time texting her than touching me, and pulled out the document I'd been carrying for 7 days. The letterhead gleamed under the lights. California State Lottery Commission. Tom's face drained of color. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. I smiled. 7 days ago, I said, I won $98 million. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. And everything he thought he knew, about me, about power, about who was leaving who, began to collapse. Tom thought Kathleen was oblivious. That was his first mistake. The second was believing her silence meant weakness. On the surface, Kathleen Wilson looked exactly as she had for years, graceful, predictable, soft-spoken. She moved through Palm Springs like a decorative fixture, present, pleasant, ignorable. The kind of woman men like Tom mistook for furniture, useful, familiar, easy to overlook. But beneath that calm exterior, something had shifted months ago, quietly, irrevocably. It began the night she found the receipt. She hadn't been snooping. That was the part that still amused her. The truth had slipped up on its own, careless and arrogant, the way liars often are when they think they're untouchable. Tom had left his suit jacket draped over the back of the dining chair, a faint floral perfume clinging to the fabric. Not Kathleen's, never hers. When she reached into the pocket to hang it properly, her fingers brushed folded paper. A diamond bracelet, Tiffany blue box, purchased on their joint credit card. The date on the receipt burned into her memory, not because of the amount, though it was obscene, but because it was the same night Tom had missed her birthday dinner. Emergency meeting, he'd said. Kathleen had stared at the receipt for a long time, her pulse steady, her breath even. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She didn't confront him. She did something far more dangerous. She paid attention. From that night on, Kathleen began observing her husband the way one studies a stranger across a crowded room, quietly, clinically, without attachment. She noticed the late-night conferences with no follow-up emails, the unexplained withdrawals from their savings, the way his phone never left his hand anymore, how he angled the screen away from her body as if shielding it from light. She noticed the lies stacked on top of lies, each one thinner than the last. And slowly, deliberately, she began to prepare. The lawyer came first. Eleanor Wilson was not family, no relation, despite the shared surname, but she was formidable in a way Kathleen admired instantly. Silver-haired, razor-eyed, and utterly unromantic about human behavior. People don't change under pressure, Eleanor had said during their first meeting, fingers steepled across a mahogany desk. They reveal themselves. Kathleen nodded. Then I want everything documented. They worked quietly, methodically, every suspicious transaction, every email, every transfer Tom thought was invisible. Kathleen learned how to copy phone data, how to mirror accounts, how to build a paper trail so airtight it could suffocate a lie. At night, while Tom slept beside her, breathing deeply with the smug ease of a man who believed himself in control, Kathleen lay awake memorizing details. Passwords, dates, names. She learned about Amanda in accounting, overworked, underpaid, perpetually ignored. A woman who had tried more than once to raise concerns about irregular transfers and been brushed aside by Tom's charm and bluster. All it took was one lunch. I just need someone to listen, Amanda had said, twisting her napkin nervously. I thought maybe as his wife you might understand. Kathleen had reached across the table and covered Amanda's hand gently. Oh, she'd said softly, I understand perfectly. The lottery win came later. Pure chance, absurd, almost cruel luck. Kathleen remembered the moment vividly, not the explosion of joy people imagine, but the silence. The way the world seemed to pause while she stared at 6 matching numbers under the dim kitchen light at 3:07 a.m. She checked once, twice, 7 times. Her hands didn't shake, her heart didn't race. Instead, a strange calm settled over her, deep and expansive, like the ocean pulling back before a wave. She didn't wake Tom. She didn't tell a soul. She called Eleanor. Within hours, the machine was in motion. Trusts, shell protections, legal firewalls designed specifically for lottery winners, whose greatest threat often came not from strangers, but from the people closest to them. Before he knows, Eleanor warned, everything must already be done. Kathleen smiled into the phone. He won't know, she said, not until it's too late. The photo album had been the final stroke of irony. Tom thought it was sentimental, pathetic, proof of her desperation. In truth, it was a vault. Each page carefully chosen, each memory a distraction, Beneath the glossy photos, honeymoons, anniversaries, holidays, were hidden compartments a leaner had helped design. Documents folded with surgical precision. Evidence sealed in plain sight. Kathleen assembled it slowly, lovingly, the way one might prepare a gift. Or a trap. By the time Tom stood in the living room that night, mocking 25 years of marriage with careless fingers, everything was already over. He just didn't know it yet. Kathleen watched him flip through the album, bending corners, sneering at smiles that now felt like they belonged to someone else entirely. And as he packed his suitcase, announced his affair, laughed about his future, she felt nothing. No grief. No fear. No regret. Only a steady, undeniable certainty. The game had already been played. And Tom was about to lose far more than a wife. The silence after Tom left felt heavier than his shouting ever had. Kathleen stood alone in the living room, the city lights blinking through the glass like distant witnesses. The photo album rested on the coffee table, open now, not to memories, but to the thin hollow she'd carved months ago with a letter opener and patience. The documents were gone, transferred earlier that evening into a fireproof case hidden behind the false back of her closet. What remained were photographs, smiles, vacations, anniversaries, evidence of a marriage that had existed only on the surface. She closed the album gently. Only then did she allow her hands to shake. Not from fear, from release. For months, Kathleen had lived two lives. The woman Tom thought he knew, the soft-spoken wife, the retired interior designer who volunteered twice a week and still cooked dinners he barely touched, was a costume. The real Kathleen had been awake at night, learning a new language, wire transfers, shell companies, forensic accounting. She had memorized Tom's habits the way one studies an enemy, when he lied, when he spent, when he grew careless. And Tom had grown very careless. She walked into the bedroom and opened the wardrobe. Tom's side was already stripped bare, hangers swinging slightly as if startled. Her side was immaculate. At the back, she pressed her palm against the panel she'd installed herself. It clicked open. Inside, a slim laptop, a burner phone, a leather folder. Kathleen sat on the bed and opened the laptop. The screen lit her face in pale blue as encrypted files loaded one by one. Transactions Tom thought were invisible. Accounts he believed were untraceable. Loans taken against properties he'd told her were paid off. There it was, the real story of their marriage, told not in photographs, but in numbers. She checked the time. 11:47 p.m. Right on schedule, her phone buzzed. Amanda, accounting. He left yet? Kathleen typed back. Kathleen. Yes, with a suitcase and an ego. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then. Amanda. Good. The board emergency session is confirmed for 8 a.m. I sent everything you flagged, plus something else. Kathleen paused. Kathleen. Something else. Several seconds passed before the reply came. Amanda. There's a second set of books, not just embezzlement. He's been using the company as collateral for a private deal. Offshore. Very dirty. Kathleen closed her eyes slowly. So that was it. The reason Tom had been so confident. The reason he'd laughed while leaving. He hadn't just been trading wives. He'd been gambling with other people's money, convinced he was untouchable. You never learn, she murmured to the empty room. She stood, poured herself a glass of water she didn't drink, and stared at her reflection in the dark window. The woman looking back at her seemed older than yesterday, but steadier, sharper. Her phone buzzed again, this time a call. Unknown number. Kathleen answered calmly. Hello. A man's voice, measured, professional. Mrs. Wilson, this is Detective Harrison, Palm Springs Financial Crimes Unit. I was told you might be expecting my call. Kathleen's lips curved into a faint smile. Yes, she said, I was. There was a pause on the line, just long enough for him to recognize something in her tone. We'd like to ask you a few questions about your husband. My ex-husband, Kathleen corrected gently, and I'd be happy to help. In fact, I've been waiting. She ended the call, and set the phone down. Outside, a car door slammed. Somewhere far below, an engine started, Tom finally leaving for good. Kathleen watched until the headlights disappeared into the night. She didn't wave. She returned to the desk, opened the leather folder, and pulled out the last document, the one she hadn't shown him yet. A notarized agreement, signed weeks ago, ensuring that every asset tied to her inheritance, every future earning, every cent of the lottery payout was sealed away beyond his reach. Freedom, in black and white. Kathleen slid it back into the folder. Tomorrow, Tom would wake up thinking the worst was behind him. Tomorrow, the board would wake up knowing it was. She turned off the lights and went to bed for the first time in months without setting an alarm. For the first time in 25 years, Kathleen Wilson slept without fear, while the man who underestimated her drove straight toward the reckoning she had already arranged. The album felt heavier than it should have. Kathleen noticed it the moment Tom let it slip from his hands, the leather cover landing on the coffee table with a dull, final thud. Not the sentimental kind of weight, the kind that presses into your palms. The kind that carries consequence. Tom was still talking. He always was. "Jessica's waiting downstairs," he said, adjusting his cufflinks with a practiced flick, the blue silk tie she'd bought him glinting under the recessed lights. "I don't want to be late. First impressions matter." Kathleen didn't answer right away. She sat, fingers resting lightly on the album, feeling the faint ridge along the spine where the stitching wasn't quite flush. She had sewn it herself 3 nights ago, needle trembling only once. Funny how fear quiets when purpose replaces it. "Tom," she said softly. He paused, already annoyed. "What?" She opened the album. The first pages were harmless enough, too harmless. Their wedding photo, sunburned smiles and champagne flutes raised too high. A Polaroid from their first apartment, crooked blinds and hope spilling out of the frame. He scoffed. "You kept all this," he said. "God, Kathleen, you really are." She turned the page. And that's when his breath hitched. Between the glossy photograph of their Hawaiian vacation, him squinting into the sun, her hand resting possessively on his arm, there was something else. Not a photo, not a receipt. A folded document. Crisp, white official. Tom frowned. "What is that?" Kathleen slid it out carefully, the way one handles something that can cut if you're careless. "Do you remember that night last week?" she asked. "When you came home late, you said you were stuck in traffic on the I-10. He shrugged. "I don't remember every." "That was the night I didn't sleep," she continued, voice calm, measured. "I was at the kitchen table at 3 a.m, staring at 6 numbers I'd checked 10 times already." His face drained slowly, like water receding from a shoreline. Kathleen unfolded the document. The California State Lottery seal shimmered under the lights. Tom laughed once, a sharp, brittle sound. "Is this a joke?" "No." He stepped closer, squinting, trying to read. His fingers twitched as if he might snatch it, but something in her posture stopped him. "7 days ago," she said, "I won $98 million. Silence crashed into the room. After taxes, it was just over 60 million. She didn't say the number again. She didn't need to. It was written there in black ink, impossible to negotiate with. Tom's suitcase slipped from his hand. "You," his voice cracked. "You're lying." She met his eyes. "I already met with attorneys, financial advisors. The trust is in my name only, filed before you ever said the word divorce." A bead of sweat traced down his temple. "Lottery winnings acquired before divorce proceedings," she went on, almost gently, "are considered separate property." He staggered back, collapsing onto the Italian leather sofa he'd insisted they buy, another debt she'd quietly documented. "Kathleen," he whispered, panic seeping in, this doesn't have to." She flipped another page. This time there was no envelope, just photocopies. Bank statements. Credit card charges. Hotel receipts from Santa Barbara. Jewelry invoices. Wire transfers she'd circled in red. "I know about the gambling," she said. The offshore accounts, the money you've been moving through shell companies. His mouth opened, closed. How did you? Your accountant, she replied. Turns out people talk when they realize they're about to be blamed. His phone buzzed again. Jessica. Tom stared at it like it was a ticking bomb. You used our joint account to buy her a diamond bracelet, Kathleen added. That alone would have been messy in court. Everything else, she tilted her head. Criminal. The knocking came then. Sharp, authoritative. Mr. Thomas Wilson, a voice called from the other side of the door. Police. Tom lunged for her arm. Please, you don't understand, there are people involved. Kathleen gently pried his fingers away. I understand perfectly, she said. That's why the album was never about memories. She walked to the door as officers stepped in, her movements unhurried, precise. Tom was shaking now, words tumbling over each other as they cuffed him. As they led him away, he twisted back toward her, eyes wild. You planned this, he spat. The anniversary, the album. She smiled, small and serene. The lottery was luck, she said. Everything else was survival. The door closed behind them. Kathleen stood alone in the quiet, the album still open on the table. Between the pages of the past, she had hidden the future. And now, finally, it was hers.